What are some examples of it's cheaper to be rich than poor? Remote work. I'm practically saving the equivalent in a minimum wage job from reduced wear and tear, gas servicing, insurance. And that's just the quantitative dollars. Furniture. More expensive furniture is often made better and lasts longer, so you don't have to keep buying new. Same with clothes. Dental care. If you can afford to go to the dentist even once a year, get preventative care. Fix cavities early, and it's significantly less expensive than more complicated restorations and treatment. I know way more poor people who just wait there's a serious issue and just have a tooth pulled because that's cheaper. I know someone who lost a chunk of jawbone from a bad tooth and needed a bone graft. Not to mention, dentists in the US have worked hard to prevent dental care being included in health insurance. You need separate dental insurance, even though oral health is very much connected with your overall health. I need to go to the dentist so bad, but I've been avoiding it. Both cost money and also because of severe anxiety, and I was just at the point where I was like, just do it, and then the pandemic hit. But I know I will be fricked harder if I don't go. Bank accounts charging your card for overdrafts or low balances. Not being able to pay for medical appointments, which led to accumulating health issues over time, which is extremely expensive. Fast food being cheaper than healthy food, so accumulation of heart issues, obesity, etc. Not being able to afford college tuition, making it extremely difficult to find well-paying careers. Entrepreneurship and investing become dangerous territory. Risk tolerance is too low when funds are low as well. Becomes almost as risky as gambling at this point. Being unable to take a day off work is not an option when living paycheck to paycheck. I respect the frick out of the hustlers out there, but also keep in mind that free time and mental health are important to your overall well-being. I used to rent this apartment in Manhattan on Thompson St. by Washington SQ. I've also lived in Chinatown, UES, Brooklyn, East New York, and Ridgewood, and always used coin-operated self-service laundry because why would I pay more for someone to do my laundry? Well, the first day I moved to Thompson Street I wanted to clean some sheets and clothes. Good thing there's a self-service laundromat across the street. I popped in and filled 2 medium-sized machines. It was something crazy like 30 quarters for each machine and 4 minutes per quarter to dry. All in all it cost me about $45 and 2 hours of my time to wash and dry everything. I told a few co-workers who live fairly close by this story and they asked me why I do my own laundry because it's more expensive. The next week I canvassed the 2-block radius of my apartment and found a Korean dry cleaners and laundry service. I started bringing my laundry to them, who export it out to BK or NJ, and they bill me $19 and tie a bow on top. I still can't believe how much cheaper it was and that the self-service laundromats in nice neighborhoods are a scam. Poor me would never think a rich move like laundry service would save money over doing your own. When I worked for a non-profit making less than $40k a year, I worked 45/50 HRS per week, and I paid the following. Paid roughly $60 a month for my health plan at work, which was basic prescription coverage for $5 per, and limited dental. Nothing else was covered. Paid $20 a month for my bank account, with 21% interest on my credit card, 0.01% interest rate on savings. Had no sick days. Had 0 benefits as far as RRSP, stock, work from home allowance. Spent $80 a month on bus passes because I had to work from the office. I now work for a large software company, work 25-35 hours per week, make substantially more money and have the following expenses perks. $20 a month for my health plan which offers full prescription, comprehensive dental and mental health coverage, massage, physio, etc. Pay $0 a month for multiple bank accounts and have 18% interest, 0.5 interest rates on savings. $50 a month subsidy for internet at home. Free cell phone. Stock purchase plan that offers matching stock purchases and discounts. Sick days, flex days, and more than 2x the PTO. RRSP matching up to $5k a year. $500 year budget for home office expenses. Work from home, meaning saving on transit expenses. The high cost of being poor is very real. It's cheaper to be not poor because you never miss bill payments. Poor people are more likely to have late bills. so they get all the late fees associated with that. It is harder to buy groceries and household items in bulk, thus missing out on savings per unit. Payday loans. Transportation. Being poor means you might not have a good reliable car, assuming you can even afford one, so your 30-year-old junker breaks down regularly and thus costs more money to upkeep compared to a middle-class person's vehicle. And then, if you can't afford to fix your car, you no longer have a source of transportation to get to work, then you get fired, and it's a vicious downhill cycle. There are so many things that are small costs that add up and end up being more expensive if you're poor versus rich. As a not rich but not poor, I can save lots of money by paying the whole year's bill in advance on stuff like car insurance instead of paying more monthly. Being sick. At least in the USA, the sick policy is usually more generous the more $ you make, and if you're an hourly employee with no sick days you work or you do not get paid. If you have to seek treatment or, God forbid, go to the hospital, then you better hope you have decent health insurance or it will cost you an arm and a leg. Many Americans are one medical emergency from total financial ruin. I just started a job as a teacher 2 weeks ago, and my job is an hour away from my apartment. My payroll didn't kick in time and I have to wait another 7 days for my first paycheck. I can't afford the commute this week or to pay for my uniform, so I applied for a personal loan, which I'll owe significant interest on at the end of the month when I pay it off because I have bad credit. It is so hard out here. I was at my wit's end this morning, lol. It's so hard to do my job effectively when I have to worry about this stuff, and I'm sure that's going to cost me somewhere too. Car maintenance, preventative medical and dental care, home repair before it's an emergency, access to healthy food and lifestyle. Basically all those things that you put off until it's a very expensive problem when you're poor. Everyone's gonna say rent versus mortgage, but there's more to it than just equity. Another aspect is that there's an opportunity cost to buying that's not immediately obvious, and that cost is significantly reduced, if not outright inverted to a benefit, the better off you are, and that is jobs. Say you and your neighbor are competing for a job. The job is in another city with a comparable cost of living. It's not going to be any more or less expensive to live there rather than here. The job pays 20% more, a significant raise, except you can't really afford both a mortgage and rent. You need the proceeds from the sale of your current home to buy a new one. And that's on top of the huge expense that is moving your stuff to another city. It's going to be a pretty significant hardship to actually accept the new job. Sure, once you're there it's a clear benefit, but you can't actually afford the transition. Your neighbor, on the other hand, is a bit more well off than you. They have more savings, pay a smaller percent of their income in housing. Even though the job is only a 10% raise for them, they can actually afford to move and take it. They can afford to pay rent and the mortgage for a couple of months while waiting for the house to sell so that they can buy a new one while maintaining adequate reserves. Your other neighbor, on the other hand, makes even more money than either of you and has even bigger savings. Sure, the job is only a 5% raise, but they can afford to just outright buy a new house in the new city and retain the old one, hiring a rental management firm to get in some tenants. Sure, between landlord expenses and the management company's cut, they don't even pay for the mortgage from the tenants, but it's close and they keep on building that equity for very little cost. Your other neighbor makes more than all of you. He gets a management job at that company for a 10% raise, but the company pays for all of his moving expenses, including 4 months in an apartment while he secures a new house. He has basically zero cash outlay to move except for the fast food and gas on the drive over to the new city. He doesn't understand why some people turn down jobs that pay better because they can't afford to accept. There's a sweet spot in your career and economic life where renting makes more sense. You can just say nah, I don't want to live here anymore and take that better paying job in another city. But that's only for poor people. The richer you are, the fewer opportunity costs you are paying so you can get that equity. The rich get richer and poor people are stuck at a lower paying job. My mortgage is now cheaper than the last apartment we were renting, although that does not take into account maintenance costs, like a roof or painting, etc. But it took $25k down and good credit. Period products. There's been a debate in my country whether they should have them freely available in schools for everyone up until their 25th birthday, as we already do with contraception in pharmacies. since 40% out of all 14-25-year-olds cannot afford them. The amount of people saying that they should just buy reusable pads if they can't afford the single-use ones etc. They completely disregard the fact that one reusable product is more expensive than a pack of single-use pads, which 40% can't afford already. Not to mention that they shouldn't buy iPhones and makeup than folks. Some people just don't know what it's like to be poor. I'm on benefits and I've had times, more than once, where I've had to choose sanitary towels over groceries because I couldn't afford both. A little late to the party here, but getting arrested costs way less if you have money. Paying out of pocket for a lawyer may cost more upfront, but if you can't afford one, or even bail, you will be in a much harder spot. You could easily lose your job if you have to stay in jail until your trial. Court-appointed attorneys are often incredibly overworked and will not work as hard to get you a better deal. Then if you can't afford the legal fees to seal your record, that arrest could prevent you from getting a job that pays well enough to afford a lawyer. Don't forget being able to afford cash bail and not missing the money while your case works its way through the system versus giving away 10% to a bail bondsman that you will never see back even if you're acquitted. My bank started waiving fees after my account balance passed a certain threshold. You literally have to pay more for the same service if you're poor. Not saying it's fair, but it makes economic sense. Banks use the money people put in when they give out loans, but they can only use a certain proportion of it, so a higher balance means more leverage for the bank and a customer they really don't want to lose to another bank with lower fees. When I was 23, I spent $300 on a nice pair of leather dress shoes. My friends made fun of me for it. I'm 46 now. They look better today than the day they came out of the box and they are more comfortable than ever. They'll be good for at least another decade. That's 35 years, minimum. Prior to that I'd spent $70 on a pair of shoes that would barely last 18 months. A good, expensive pair of shoes or boots, well cared for, costs less over time than a cheap pair. Funny you say that. I almost bought a pair of $400 Italian leather shoes around the same time as you. They were so soft and comfortable. I decided against it and still regret not getting them. Renting a home versus owning. You often pay much more in rent than you would if you could purchase a house. I saw a tweet going around recently where they said something like this. The bank says I can't afford $750 in mortgage payments, so instead I pay $1,000 in rent. ETA, I hear those of you talking about the hidden expenses of home ownership, which is something I totally relate to as an owner of 2 houses. However, I still make money renting out one of my houses by building and property tax, maintenance expenses and water, something that's usually included in our area, not sure about other places, into the rent. The fact that I have a hefty savings to deal with problems as they pop up is also an example of an instance where wealth creates more wealth. And I have created that wealth by making money on my rental. There are always exceptions, but in general, I think you would be hard pressed to find any sort of financial advisor that recommends renting over owning if you're planning on living in the area long term. Plus equity is everything, and most of what you put into a home you own you will get back. I spent about £42k on rent over 7 years, which is a whole deposit for a house in the area I live. Always pisses me off that I never missed a rent payment, but that fact would count for nothing when applying for a mortgage. Time. Rich people seem to have all the time in the world while people like me don't seem to have enough hours in a day. Maybe a case of the grass being greener, but it sure doesn't feel like it. A big part of this is probably the ability to pay someone else to do the things that take up your time. Home maintenance, cleaning, washing the car, doing your grocery shopping. Imagine all the free time you'd gain back if all your errands were sorted for you. I can dream, I guess. As someone who grew up on welfare and is now solidly upper class, travel. I used to travel for work, expensing meals, hotels, flights, etc. on my personal card and then expensing them later. I rack up so many airline, hotel, and credit card points that I can generally do at least one nearly free vacation a year or at least pay for 2 international flights. Toiletries. I will always need toilet paper and it's cheaper to buy them by the dozens. Healthcare. Medicaid is cheap but isn't taken everywhere. But my platinum plan costs me nothing. No copay, no deductible, no co-insurance. Most jobs that have this benefit pay really well. Misc freebies. I don't know how to categorize this, but when you make a lot of money you end up in situations where you just get stuff for free just for being there. Colleague can't make it to the game, so here's 2 free courtside tickets. One of your friends has a house in Tahoe you're welcome to stay at. Your mentor is a successful entrepreneur and asks about funding your venture when you only wanted advice. The list goes on. Privilege snowballs like crazy. Not really cheaper to be rich. More cheaper to be at least middle class. Owning a home. Not only is a mortgage often less than rent, but at the end of your mortgage, you are left with a house that you own. You can sell it, often for more than you paid, or continue living in it for free, apart from taxes, utilities. Someone stuck renting their whole life comes out the other end with nothing. I mean, arguably someone hovering above the poverty line will view the middle class as comparatively rich. But I get your point. The rent mortgage situation these days grinds my gears constantly. It's generally cheaper per unit to buy in bulk, but if you can't afford the bulk total price or have no place to store it, you end up paying more. I can buy a year's supply of toilet paper and sanitary products and pay a few cents per item if I can afford a large enough home with storage space for bulk stuff like that. But someone renting a small apartment and scraping by paycheck to paycheck doesn't have that choice. It's not really fair. When you are constantly struggling to stay on top of bills, it is inevitable that you will pay something late or miss a payment. That leads to extra charges and late fees. Having a hard time finding a job and cannot afford to pay for the parking garage downtown? Prepare yourself for the parking tickets you'll receive while trying to go to interviews. It is kind of like a death by 1,000 tiny cuts. God forbid you end up with a wife who destroys your credit and you end up not able to open a checking account. That happened to me. Even 20 years later, I cannot laugh about it. Those years were fricked. Anything with a high upfront cost. The work boots example is best. Rich can buy the Red Wings that will last forever for $200. Poor have to settle for $30 Walmart boots that must be replaced annually. Now add in cars, Costco bulk versus single roll, home versus rent, etc, etc. Cause is such a huge one. I had a series of small hatchback pieces of crap for years. Always cost me money with repairs or issues. Then once I had some money I bought an old Lexus and it's given me zero issues and is cheaper to run. Growing up without a computer makes poor kids fall so behind their richer peers. My friend works as a teacher for inner city high schoolers and most never owned a laptop until the school gave them one for COVID. They don't know how to use the essential applications. At one point my friend literally explained to them how to Google anything they need. They were kind of dazzled. In comparison, my boyfriend's son is 9-year-old, middle class, and literally making spreadsheets and video games. He knows how to Google anything he wants and works a computer as well as an adult. This gap in knowledge is going to greatly affect poor kids in the future as computer knowledge will be a must in almost any job. You don't have to wait until you get paid to get your car fixed. Same goes for any home repairs. Same goes for health issues. When I have hit the income threshold that allows me to pay a bill now instead of waiting until my next paycheck, it makes a whole world of difference. That isn't even being rich, it is just having stability. I've been back and forth between those two worlds. Financing versus paying outright for things. I grew up in a middle class family and my parents grew up dirt poor. I'm talking only one pair of shoes a year. Poor. They worked hard and saved what they could, but when big expenses came up, they financed. Now I know some places do interest-free financing for a specific amount of time, which is cool, but for the most part, that wasn't the norm. I fell into credit card debt due to similar thinking, and I'm now working my way out of it. I don't buy anything unless I can pay for it in cash on my debit. Most places, if you can pay for it outright, you'll pay less. For instance, my mattress. If I had the cash at that time, I'd have paid $200 less. Nutrition. When you are rich you can afford fresh food. Poor and you eat processed food every day. This takes a long-term toll on your health. The poor become overweight and their health problems intensify. Banking. It's easier to have a checking and savings account essentially for free so long as you have a direct deposit of a certain amount a month and keep your balance in the positive. If you are too poor to keep your bank account filled, you will get charged, and it's more expensive to bank in low-income areas due to ATM fees and the lack of banking services in your immediate area. College fund versus student loans. I'm not poor, but my parents couldn't afford to pay my tuition. I have an Rs and a BA and $40,000 of debt. I've been paying on my loans for several years and the principal still hasn't gone down. Buying in bulk. My parents love buying as much non-perishable stuff as they can when it's on special. They aren't quite as crazy as the people on those couponing shows, but they will troll the newspapers for specials. My dad calculated that the cupboard he had built in the garage to store everything was paid off through their savings on the food within 6 months. Cars are the easy example. If you can afford a new car, you'll get something that is comparatively low maintenance for a few years. If you can't, you might end up with something that is unreliable and requires regular attention, and end up costing more than the new vehicle in the long run. I've always appreciated the Samuel Vimes Boot theory of economic unfairness. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vimes reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50, but an affordable pair of boots, which were sort of okay for a season or two and then leaked like heck when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vimes always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that'd still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time. While the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same time and would still have wet feet. Simply put, a lot of low-cost items are also low-quality items. So when you can only afford the low-cost items, you end up spending more on them over the course of time. If you had the financial means to purchase something higher quality and longer lasting, though, you'd spend more initially, but less in the long run. Obligatory Pratchett. No, Sir Terry. Took the family to London and stayed at the Park Plaza, Westminster. I told the wife I don't care about the cost. I want a pool and free breakfast. Ended up getting a real good deal. Breakfast and a pool. Basically in the middle of everything. Never paid for a cab and took the tube everywhere. Frick Disney, I showed my son real castles. Adopt me. Feeding your baby. Breast milk is free. Formula is not. Statistically, the poorer you are, the highest your chance of using formula. Formula costs a fortune. Dental care. When my income was less stable, I didn't prioritize paying for fillings, cleanings etc. unless they were absolutely necessary. I did get a couple of fillings done. NHS dentist, but the experience was awful, so I avoided going back. Over time my dental health has gotten worse, and during the last year I've had to fork out so much money to get everything sorted by a private dentist. My new dentist also told me that all my previous fillings failed because my old dentist did such a bad job. Shoes and mattresses. Poor you tend to buy what you can afford. Being financially comfortable means you can buy quality. It not only lasts far longer but is better for your health, which is a huge cost savings over time. Money is literally the ultimate trump card in life. Unfortunately, your credit score doesn't matter, your interest rates don't matter, your background or past doesn't matter. If you have money, you can overcome all of those things. Applying for a mortgage and have a below average credit score and only 5% down? Well, here is a 5% interest rate and we need you to pay PMI for the remainder of the loan. Applying for a mortgage with an average credit score but you have 50% to put down on the house? Credit score doesn't mean anything. You'll get the best rate and no PMI. That's just financial common sense for the bank though. The problem is that the average 20-year-old working part-time is never gonna save enough money to make a serious down payment on a home. Criminal punishments. A speeding ticket can cost a poor person 3 days of work, but a $2 million fine on Apple for improper disposal of hazardous waste is a no-no. Anyway, meme. Finland's proportional fine system makes a lot of sense. Performing well in college. When I went to school, I was dirt poor, even with student loans, and couldn't do anything on weekends. People say cook your own food and don't waste money on partying, but you try cooking full meals while you have 10 hours of projects to do, or expect to be somewhat sane when you can't even go out with your friends for an entire year unless someone picks up your tab. I remember just thinking how if I just had $200 to burn each month, that could have been at least 2-3 hours saved by ordering food or being able to go out twice a month with friends. My dad and I have gone to numerous box suites at major sporting events, Mariners, Blazers, where all drinks, including alcoholic, and foods, sometimes even our choice of foods, have been entirely free, as well as racing chalets that also had free beverages, including alcoholic, and foods for IndyCar races. Also free VIP attendance at a music festival which also included free beverages, including alcohol, and food. Our extra cost of attending these events, the gas to drive there, as the intention was to maintain or generate favor with us. It's pretty gross when you think about it. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.